Some would think that my wife and my children are delighted that my voice doesn't work, but I'm generally kind of quiet man, other than when I'm preaching. So it has been quiet around the house. But last week, Grace Marie introduced you more to Jacob and how dysfunctional that family was, having 4 different wives. And so eventually, Rachel does give birth to a son, and she names him Joseph, which means add to me. The moment she had a child, she wanted another one. So eventually she does give birth to another son, to a Benjamin. But there are complications with labor, and she dies during childbirth. And so that's disheartening for Jacob. So Joseph has a very dysfunctional family unit. He has 10 half-brothers, 1 full brother, and 1 full mess. But to add insult to injury, Jacob plays favorites. He decides to give Joseph, his favorite son, to his favorite wife, an outfit. The King James Version calls it a coat of many colors. The NIV calls it a richly ornamented robe. You just heard in the NRSV, a robe with long sleeves. One commentator mentions that it extends way beyond the ankles and extends beyond the wrists. It was long and flowing. Here's something to put it in cultural context. Imagine you're a construction worker, and you show up on the job in a 3-piece suit and with a mink coat. How much work are you going to get done? Now, as Joseph was on parade, he was saying to his brothers, I am Daddy's favorite. But he was also saying, I ain't going to do a lick of work. When it comes to working, that's your job. I'm just here to be on display. And so his brothers hated him. He also was a dreamer. Now we know through this story his dreams come true. Dreams aren't bad. But he rubs the dreams in his brother's face. We're told here that he is a tattletale. He rats on his brothers. And later he's sharing with them, guess what? You're all going to bow down to me. It doesn't go over so well. In fact, to the point that they are watching sheep in Dothan, and they see Joseph at a distance, and they say, here comes that dreamer. Let's put him to death. Reuben's the one who intervenes. No, let's just throw him in a pit. But they're ready to leave him for dead until those Midianite traders come through. And they end up selling their brother for 20 shekels, which was the going rate for a handicap slave back in that day. So they didn't make too much money on the deal. I like the way that Andrew Lloyd Webber puts it in Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. The accuracy of these dreams we brothers do not know. But the one thing that we're sure about, the dreamers gotta go, right? We don't like dreamers. Sometimes they make us uncomfortable. Sometimes we're very content with the mundane instead of striving for the miraculous. Sometimes we're okay with the superficial instead of expecting the supernatural. I'd like to spend some time dreaming about First Church here this morning. Before that, a quote from an amazing man, T.E. Lawrence, known by some Lawrence of Arabia, but the British archaeologist, author, and military strategist once upon a time said this: all men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night in the dusty recesses of their minds wake up in the day to find it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dreams with open eyes to make it possible. This morning, let's not get confined to the dusty recesses of our minds. Let's dream God's dreams and expect the impossible. Let's talk first of all about worship here at First Church. Since the year 2000, there have been 5 worship services each weekend. That's a lot, isn't it? How have those been doing? Well, let's look. For the last decade here, the 5:30 worship service, which is really, it's a blended service, some old-time gospel songs, some contemporary songs as well. As you see, this service has declined the most of all the worship services. It has decreased in attendance by 56% over the last 10 years. Not good, huh? Next, look at the 6:45 service, which is, of all of our services, it is the most contemporary. It's around tables in the social hall, and people eat as they worship as well. But we see a strong dip in the years 2012 and 13, but overall, this service has increased in size by about 5%. Somewhat plateaued, but a 5% growth at that service. How about here at 8 o'clock? How have things been going? Not so good, huh? We've seen a decrease in attendance by 30% at this service. Part of that is that some people are now shut in. Excuse me. Some are shut in, some have passed away, some have moved away, but there has been a decline in this service, as you can see. How about the next service, 9:30? Over the last decade, this service has increased in its attendance by 29%. So that's the largest growth of all of our services. That is currently our biggest worship service. How about 11 o'clock? It's actually exactly the same as this 8 o'clock service, has decreased in attendance by 30%. So this is from 2008 through, in this year, it's actually, we didn't include Easter in the statistic because that skews everything. And we didn't throw summer in yet because this summer has been pitiful with worship attendance. But generally, if you take the first few months of the year, that will be your average for the year end. So it should be pretty close about where it is. But as a whole, in the last decade, the church has declined by 10%. So the denominational average is 20. So we're not quite there. But interesting to analyze the statistics, for we see that contemporary services have been increasing in attendance and traditional services have been decreasing in attendance. So that's challenging for the leadership team, and that's challenging for staff to look and really ask ourselves, if traditional is declining and contemporary is growing, do we really need to have two traditional services? Should it be that one of those becomes a contemporary service? And if so, which one? Now, many people would say, oh, that's fine to go ahead and change, but don't you mess with my service, right? We often are comfortable in a style we like, in a time we like. My hope and my dream would be that people aren't so wrapped up in a particular service or a particular style, but they're willing to do whatever's possible so that people come to know Jesus. Because really that's why we're here, not for our own comfort, but for others to come to know him. So, but that's something challenging to consider. Should one of these traditional services become contemporary? Should one of these services become blended? But we see at 5:30 the blended's not working, but it's hard to tell, is that the style or is that the time period? Or, difficult to know. But we need to wrestle with that and continue to ponder that as we move into the future. Also looking at worship. I would dream that our worship services become more worshipful. It's easy to just go through the motions, to do what we've done without ever really connecting with God. In fact, I would say often people don't really enter into God's presence when it comes to worship. Last weekend, I was to the Bedford United Methodist Church. This congregation is the largest in our district. Bedford is the second largest. And I would say the service I was attending, with musicality, we are probably one notch above them. But you want to know where there are 3 notches above us? Congregational singing. It was beautiful to be, no voice, unable to sing, but to be able to hear and take that in. The people were really connecting with God through the music and through singing. And Sometimes we don't do that. Sometimes we're sitting there to be entertained. Sometimes we're just kind of there. But even if you're not a vocalist, you need to try to connect with the lyrics, with the song. Many of them are prayers. I could see as Ross was singing that some of you are smiling and going along because you're resonating with those words, but others are kind of, right? And sometimes with a hymn, it's like, Lord, when is this going to be over? You know, some people have that look on their faces, but all of it is to be a chance for us to usher into God's presence and to yearn to seek him. John Wesley had this to say about singing. Sing lustily with a good courage. Be aware of singing as if you were half dead or half asleep. Lift up your voice with strength. Wesley also said, sing spiritually. Have an eye to God in every word you sing. That's a challenge, huh? Thinking your own relationship with God. Aim at pleasing him more than yourself or any other creature. See that your heart's not carried away with the sound, but offered to God continually. And so, but all of worship is to be that way. To having an eye to God, constantly connecting. Terry McAlhorn, who is a worship leader as well as a songwriter, has shared too often our worship experiences are missing two things, two W words: waiting and wanting. We need to wait on God to move. David shares that in Psalm 40. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined and heard my cry. He lifted me up out of the pit, out of the miry clay. Or Isaiah shares, those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They'll rise up on wings like eagles. They'll run and not be weary. They'll walk and not faint. It's important for us to wait upon God. The other thing we need to do, that other W word, is wanting. Wanting God. Wanting God to move. A hunger for God, a thirst for God, a desire for more of God. We can't go to worship just merely thinking, second verse, same as the first, a little bit louder and a little bit worse. But we're waiting on God, and we're wanting God, and we're seeking him. So I hope as a whole that our worship experiences do that. Let's dream a little more, think outside the box. Why does an apple tree exist? You probably think, well, an apple tree exists to produce apples. Well, yes and no. It isn't just an apple so you have something refreshing to eat. What's inside that apple? Seeds. Why are there seeds? To produce another apple tree. So the main reason an apple tree exists is to produce another apple tree. Why does a church exist? Well, you might think to make disciples. And that's the mission of the United Methodist Church, to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, right? But it's actually broader and bigger than that. The main reason a church exists is to produce another church. It's not simply addition, it's multiplication. And something that the leadership team is considering is, what if we planted another church? What if there was another branch of this congregation elsewhere? The fastest growing church in our denomination in the United States is in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Church is called Embrace. They have 5 different campuses, as well as an online campus. So 6 if you consider that. But they've recognized there's only so much they can do at one location. And that's why they branched off to other areas. So I'm actually next month attending a training workshop about churches planting churches, looking at what does it look like to become multi-site, to have another location where the church is. So what usually happens in that scenario, about 50 or 60 people will decide for 6 months or a year to stop worshiping at one location and to go to that new site to be somewhat of a missionary, to invite friends and neighbors and others to come and to be part of that new church, to help to birth it and get it off the ground. If that's something you find intriguing, stop and talk with me about it sometime. Personally, I find it terrifying and thrilling all at the same time. But it's something definitely to look into and to consider. Again, it's not about us being comfortable. It's about whatever steps are going to help someone else come to know Jesus as Savior and Lord. So we need to be dreaming of that. Finally, I would hope this place becomes a place of transformation. I mean, that's my vision for this congregation, for us to be transformed, but also to be transforming others. Last weekend, I did a wedding, the Roaring Spring area at Diamond Farm, Diamond Lane. And it's strange when you're preaching to people you've never seen before and the comments they give you. Oh, you sounded just like Joel Osteen. All right? That was not a compliment to me. But I also heard, you remind me of that Ross from Friends. David Schwimmer? But different things. I've got Ray Romano, I've got Vince Gill, I've got Jim Neighbors, I've got Mr. Rogers, I've got, this whole list of, but never have I heard David Schwimmer before. But you know what comments I heard more than any others? That was a lovely service. That was so nice. To the point in my ministry, I don't want to hear lovely and nice. I want to hear, wow, I could sense God's presence. Wow, God was on the move. To the point I want to see souls saved. I want to see broken people healed. I want to see people increasing in their walk of faith and loving God more. So ultimately, it's my dream that this is a place of transformation. That God is transforming us, and we're out in the world transforming it. Good to dream sometimes, isn't it? My challenge for you is sometime today, maybe when you're out to lunch, that you'd spend about 5 minutes just dreaming. Maybe alone with you and God, maybe there at the table with someone else if you're eating with them. What dreams do you have for what God is doing in your own life? What dreams do you have for this congregation? Be one of those who dreams with your eyes wide open, trusting in God to do amazing things. To him be glory now and forever. Amen.